Okay, Derbyites, welcome back to our viewing panel, Slugfest. Today we're going to talk about the supporting actress race in the movie miniseries categories. The six nominees this year, we have Julia Roberts for The Normal Heart, and Ellen Burstyn, she won last year. This time she's up for Flowers in the Attic. We have Allison Tolman from Fargo, and then we have three people from American Horror Story Coven. We have Angela Bassett, Kathy Bates, and Frances Conroy. Riley, I'll come to you first. What is your order, 1 through 6?
Okay, so I've got Kathy Bates in first place, which I'm pretty proud of because none of the editors, none of the experts, and only one of the top 24 users has her. So I think I'm going to be right, and everybody else will be wrong. Second, Julia Roberts. Third, Allison Tolman. Fourth, Ellen Burstyn, and then Angela Bassett and Frances Conroy at the bottom.
Yeah, I can't figure out why you have Kathy Bates in first, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, Daniel, what's your order?
I have the same top three, but in a different order. I have Julia Roberts in first for The Normal Heart. Then I have Allison Tolman in second place. I have Kathy Bates in third, Ellen Burstyn fourth, Angela Bassett fifth, and Frances Conroy sixth.
Okay, I have Julia Roberts in first, and then I have Ellen Burstyn, and then Allison Tolman, and then I have the three Coven ladies. I can't decide which order to put them in, but my current order is Angela Bassett, Kathy Bates fifth, and then Frances Conroy in sixth. The reason I have Kathy Bates so low is because she's been nominated over and over and over. I think 10 nominations, something like that. But she's only won one, and she won 2 years ago for Two and a Half Men for a role where she plays the ghost of Charlie Sheen. It was so over the top. But Riley, why do you have her in first?
Well, first of all, you say that the only time she's won is the last time. Well, maybe she's on a hot streak, right? I think last year is very important. I mean, last year I tried to, watch all the tapes, not in the movie acting categories because nobody does that, but in the series categories, I tried to go with what I thought was the best performance. I chose, but really the Emmys, they just wanted to go with whatever was the loudest performance. I chose John Hamm over Jeff Daniels, Mandy Patinkin over Bobby Cannavale, Harry Hamlin over Dan Pugatinsky, Margaret Martindale over Carrie Preston, Jason Bateman over Jim Parsons. It was a miracle that I got Claire Danes over Kerry Washington. So I see a lot of people picking Allison Tolman, who is giving a much quieter performance than someone like Kathy Bates. Allison Tolman also doesn't really have a lot to do until the third episode of Fargo. That's when she really gets her material and you start to sympathize with her. So if voters are just watching, if they're watching the tapes in the category as best they can, then they might not want to sit through all 10 episodes of Fargo. But I could see them putting in the first 2 episodes and then not understanding what the hype was all about. Kathy Bates, meanwhile, she has kind of a lot to do in the first episodes compared to later in the season. Later in the season, it kind of becomes clear that the writers had no idea what they were doing with her. Mm-hmm. But at the beginning, on paper, it sounds great. Kathy Bates, she plays a racist. She's from the 1800s. She's dug up. She's in the 2000s, causing trouble. On paper, it sounds great, and I think that that's all that matters. This category also tends to go to the veteran a lot of the time. We've got, it's Julia Ormond, Maggie Smith, Jessica Lange, Ellen Burstyn, Eileen Atkins, Judy Davis. It doesn't favor people like Sarah Paulson last year, who, like Allison Tolman, won the Critics' Choice Award for giving a quieter performance that came up bigger later.
Another thing, like the Critics Awards, I have a feeling those critics actually watched the whole thing, which is why they gave it to Tolman this year and Sarah Paulson last year. But when it comes to Emmy voters, they maybe only plug in 1 or 2 episodes for these long miniseries. And if that's the case, you could be right, because Allison Tolman, she doesn't really shine in Fargo until the middle, definitely at the end. But the beginning is such a Billy Bob Thornton versus Martin Freeman battle that she could be overlooked.
Yeah, I don't understand that about these categories because, in the movie mini writing categories, the editing categories, and the series visual effects categories, in any other category at the Emmys, they submit single episodes to be judged. But when it comes to movie mini acting, suddenly they have to submit all 13 episodes of whatever their miniseries is. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's something that definitely needs to be looked at. I think when Gold Derby interviewed, what was his name?
John Lever?
Yeah, yeah. He said that they're going to maybe talk about, looking into some changes for next year. That's definitely a change that they should consider over there at the TV Academy.
I'm not sure if I'd agree with making that change necessarily. I think we've seen a lot of miniseries winners over the last few years win. It hasn't been a huge deficit. People like Kate Winslet and Maggie Smith, and even Ellen Burstyn last year, and even with the veteran factor, I don't think it's worth sort of disadvantaging the miniseries because to pick out one bit of a miniseries might help an actor to one extent. To say for Alison Tolman to be able to submit her very best episode of Fargo to be judged, so voters don't have to look for her entire performance. But at the same time, that would greatly disadvantage a miniseries performer against a movie performer who's going to be in an hour and a half or 2 hours, and they're going to have a complete story submitted as opposed to just a small chunk of it, which is why I think they make you send the whole thing, just so you're watching everything here, so you watch everything here, even if it's not necessarily realistic.
I think it's not so much about what the disadvantage is. I just don't understand why for movie editing they only submit one episode, but then for movie acting they submit the entire thing. I would just like there to be some consistency.
I'm a big fan of American Horror Story Coven, so I'm glad that 3 of those ladies got in. Frances Conroy, I think, was a surprise to many people. She was really good in Coven. She actually died in I think the 4th episode, and then they brought her back, and then I think she died again, actually, if I'm remembering correctly. But her wig in this was absolutely insane. She should get an Emmy just for best hairstyling. Don't give it to the hairstylist, give it for Frances Conroy because she was absolutely fantastic. But I do have her in 6th place because, look, I know she's a great actress and they've nominated her again and again and again, but she's never won anything. And so this might just, for her, the nomination is the prize, I think. But let's talk about Julia Roberts. She's only been nominated for an Emmy one time. It was 15 years ago. It was for Law and Order, a guest spot on that, and she lost to Deborah Monk for NYPD Blue. This is her 2nd Emmy nomination. She's a huge movie star. She's an Oscar winner. Daniel, what do you think? Do you think she's a slam dunk here?
Not a slam dunk. I mean, she has that movie star quality. She has that A-list star quality, and she's a respected actress. She won an Oscar. She's been nominated multiple times, including just last year for August Osage County. So, and she's taking on this role that's the kind of thing that's really catnip to voters. It's a real change of pace for her. She's playing someone who is disabled from polio, from childhood polio. It's a dark, serious, dramatic role. It's not one of her big megawatt smile kind of roles, and she's got the speech. She's this huge. She's throwing papers around the room for this one huge speech. That if you can believe it, is actually toned down from what Ellen Barkin did on stage. But it's such a huge performance in that moment, and that combined with the strength of The Normal Heart in general. If The Normal Heart weren't nominated for 16 awards, if it didn't seem like such a virtual lock for Best TV Movie, I wouldn't think necessarily that she's unbeatable, but I think all of that plus the A-list factor and the speech and the role and the project, I think it's all there for her. I think that makes her the front runner, if not the lock. If not a lock.
For the first half of the movie, I'm watching it and thinking, what's all this Julia Roberts love? I don't get it. And then after the speech, I'm like, okay, yeah, 1st place, easy 1st place. But Riley, you don't have her in 1st place.
Well, what did Kathy Bates finally win for? She won when she was the ghost of Charlie Sheen. She's just spewing out crazy one-liners, and to some extent, that's a good comparison for this American Horror Story performance. She's a racist. It's a very broad performance. You don't have to wait for her to get the performance. I think the very first scene, it starts with it's a flashback to her, you know, killing people and saying all kinds of horrible things.
And every year, American Horror Story wins at least one acting award. Season 1, Jessica Lange won the same category. Season 2, James Cromwell won. And they win for playing these over-the-top evil characters, and that really fits Kathy Bates this year. The only problem I have with Kathy Bates is that, you mentioned it earlier, halfway through the season, the writers don't know what to do with her. They actually chop her head off and put it on a slab, and she watches the miniseries Roots because every Sidibe character thinks that she is a racist, and that this will kind of desensitize her in a way. But it's so ridiculous. It's almost a cartoon at that point. So that's why I don't have her in first. That's why I have her way down. But again, if the voters don't watch the whole thing and they only watch the first couple, I could see your point about Kathy Bates being, maybe a surprise win.
Yeah, there's not much defending that storyline. But the voters, they embraced American Horror Story, I'd say, more than ever this year. They finally gave it writing and directing nominations. So maybe that was, exactly what they were waiting for.
They were waiting for a decapitated head all these years.
Yeah.
So Ellen Burstyn, we should talk about her just a little bit here before we sign off. She won last year. A lot of people were not predicting her, like me. But this year, she plays this evil grandmother who screams and yells, and it is classic Emmy bait, right? She could be the veteran surprise, is I guess what I'm saying here.
For sure. Like, I'm apprehensive about... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm saying she definitely could. We underestimated her last year because, Paulson seemed like, the performance was so obviously, head and shoulders above the rest. But, yeah, the name. And, that's not saying, Ellen Burstyn isn't good. She's a great actress. She's done great work on television. But we're talking, this is the woman who is so beloved by her peers that they nominated her for being on screen for 15 seconds. So we know that voters will check her name without seeing her. So we can never count her out of the race.
But isn't there also a Lifetime bias? I mean, Lifetime gets a lot of nominations in the movie miniseries categories, but they don't win a heck of a lot.
I think they haven't won this category since 1993 or so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Are Lifetime movies just not as good as movies on HBO or Showtime? I think it's just a different audience. And if this viewing panel happens to be, maybe middle-aged women, Lifetime fans, it could be Ellen Burstyn in a heartbeat.
Like, you're right. They do get nominations. Last year they had Alfred Woodard. But I think with Ellen Burstyn this year, is she's going up against people who are industry favorites like Julia Roberts, like Kathy Bates. So if they're kind of equal on that footing, then you have to look at where The Normal Heart has 16 nominations, American Horror Story has 17. Ellen Burstyn is the only nomination for Flowers in the Attic.
Whoa. And I just wanted to also point out Gold Derby's overall combined racetrack odds, combining the experts, editors, and users. Allison Tolman is in first place. That is very surprising to me. Julia Roberts is in second, Kathy Bates in third, and then Ellen Burstyn, Angela Bassett, and Frances Conroy. What do you think of that? Why is everyone predicting Allison Tolman here? Is it the likability factor? No one's going to rank her. When you do your 1 through 6, I'm talking about Emmy voters, when they vote, no one's really going to put her last or fifth or fourth. They're probably going to put her in the top 3 because she's so likable.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to bring up, actually. This year, they've changed the movie mini acting categories. You no longer rank them. Now, unlike all the series acting categories, now you actually rate them. So you give them a score, I think, out of 5. So I'm wondering how that affects people. Last year, maybe people hadn't seen Ellen Burstyn, but they think, oh, I like her. I'll put her at the top of my ballot no matter what. This year, if they haven't actually seen her in the performance, like, what do they give her by default if they don't feel like watching the movie? Did they give her, like, a 3 out of 5? I don't know. I'm not sure how that's going to impact the race.
But that was a great point you made, that Flowers in the Attic only has 1 nomination. I think think that's very telling that they either didn't see this or they saw it and they didn't really like it.
Well, we should watch out for considering that as a really strong indicator, because I remember last year's Best Movie Mini Actress race. We all thought it was going to be between Elizabeth Moss in Top of the Lake, which had tons of nominations, and Jessica Lange in American Horror Story Asylum, which had a ton of nominations, and they ended up giving it to Laura Linney for The Big C, which I think just had the 2, maybe 3 or something nominations overall. So, you know, when you get to these panels that are judging these performances, sometimes different whims take over, and you know, the nomination count isn't always telling.
Awesome. So that's a great way to end on. We're going to come back with our next category very shortly here. Bye, guys.